I wish I could be more excited or happy at the start here, but as I'm sure you're all aware by now, we just got an update about Halo Infinite from 343. The recent flight earned the studio and game a lot of goodwill from the community and the larger gaming audience. People were excited, and it was exciting to see people who aren't full-time Halo fanatics excited for this game. Halo looked to be making a major comeback in terms of popularity. But then this past Friday happened. A new video following up on a lot of the feedback from the flight was released, and while there was some good news in there, we also got some absolutely devastating news too. After all the goodwill 343 had built up, this was the last thing fans needed to hear, and while the transparency is appreciated, the news has led to more than a few to question just how transparent 343 have actually been with us. But before we focus on that, let's go over what was actually said. The video starts with John Unishek talking with Sam Henshaw, a producer for 343's live operations. Starting things off, the Halo Infinite flight is considered to have been a huge success, going out to hundreds of thousands of players, many who engaged for hours upon hours and gave tons of feedback. And many of those major issues reported have already been addressed. The GTX 900 series problem that prevented people with this graphics card from playing the game? Resolved. The matchmaking problem that prevented dozens of people from participating in matchmaking, myself included? Also resolved. Download issues from the Xbox Insider Hub? 343 is actively working with the Xbox Insider team to resolve that. And as this flight was from a 2-month-old build of the game, many other issues identified by the community have already been identified and resolved by 343. So lots of good news on that front. A detailed blog going over specific feedback and how 343 have approached addressing said feedback will be coming in the next few weeks too. Going forward, flighting will obviously continue post-launch, with Infinite being treated much like MCC, where new features are tested out before being brought to the game. However, there will be at least one more technical preview before launch. According to Sam, this will be testing out 4v4 Arena and the new Big Team Battle mode. This new mode will be 12v12 and, from what we saw in the multiplayer preview during E3, will be shaking up the traditional BTB experience with things like weapon pods and vehicles being dropped in via Pelican. I seriously cannot wait to try this out. And along with the other improvements, the next flight will feature new loading screens, not just a black screen with 3 dots. And the game should load and play a lot smoother. 343 have also noted that the Halo Insider support site will not shut down at the same time the flight does next time. This is something I'm very happy to hear. When it was announced that the support site would shut down as soon as the flight ended, I was rather shocked. Why not let people enjoy as much of the flight as possible, then let them fill out bug reports and issues after it's over? Thankfully, 343 have learned from this mistake. After John and Sam are done discussing things, we are presented with Brian Gerard, Community Director for 343, and Joe Staten, Lead of Creative for Infinite. I won't lie, seeing these two grizzled ancients of the franchise together on camera was a rush of nostalgia that I hadn't felt in a while, and damn did it feel good. During this, the pair had a lot of good news to share. The development team is in what's called shutdown mode, meaning they're working hard on polishing the game, even being able to meet in their studio safely for the first time in over a year. We'll talk a bit more about that at the end. Joe also mentions that multiplayer split screen will be present on Xbox at launch. They sadly don't specify if full 4-player split screen will be supported or not, but the fact the feature is there is good news. PC split screen won't be supported, but it's being investigated for post-launch support. I'd certainly love to have that feature. I used to use split screen in filming my Spartans head bobbing for video reviews, but if not, it's not a deal breaker. However, as I'm sure you're aware, this was not all good news. Joe Staten announced that campaign co-op will not be supported at launch, and neither will Forge. According to Joe, neither feature was in a state that 343 felt comfortable shipping out, thus they will be held back, released alongside the seasonal content 343 are planning for post-launch. At the moment, campaign co-op is slated for Season 2 and Forge for Season 3. For anyone who doesn't know, or perhaps forgot, Halo Infinite seasons will last 3 months. This means co-op will come 3 months down the line after release, and Forge 6 months after, assuming plans don't change. This was a huge blow to the goodwill 343 had been building up for the last few years in general, and the goodwill from the flight more recently. As many have pointed out, this is suspiciously similar to Halo 5's launch, wherein the game lacked many basic features and game types, including Forge. Now, to 343's credit, they are being more transparent and upfront about this than they were with Halo 5. With Halo 5, we found out that Forge wasn't included the same month the game released, never mind other issues with its launch. Still, that said, this is nonetheless troubling news. Looking back to July 2020, campaign co-op was promised as a launch feature for the game. Granted, this was before the delay and while the game was under different leadership. I can't help but think though, as others have, that whatever state co-op was in back then may have been acceptable for the studio at the time, but when Joe was brought in and the game was delayed, co-op and possibly other features were re-examined. In the wake of this news, I saw a lot of people saying that these decisions will harm Halo Infinite's success at launch, and while I'm not defending 343's decision here, I am skeptical of how much the lack of co-op in Forge will actually hurt the game. From the perspective of Halo fans, these are absolutely huge losses. However, from the point of view of the average gamer, I'm not so sure. Very few games actually support proper co-op. It's really only a major feature in Halo and a few other places. Forge and map editors too are far from industry standards. Of course, it's arguably because these features aren't standard that their inclusion in Halo is so important. Content creators disappointed by this news can have influence over their own audiences, never mind how game sites might frame this, especially big ones like IGN. While the multiplayer being free to play will likely help bolster numbers off the bat, how long will those players keep playing? So why not delay the game? This was apparently discussed, but for reasons not stated, it was decided to continue to shoot for the holiday 2021 release window. And for anyone who was hoping for a release date, no dice just yet. We'll have to keep waiting for that one. But should 343 delay? That's a tricky question. As a fan, I would be fine waiting a few extra months, even 6 extra months, for this launch to have key features intact. Forge being delayed, I am more understanding of, as it probably needs to be at least at the level of Halo 5's current Forge, which is an absolute beast. But the delay of it and campaign co-op makes me worried about what else might not be there at launch. How many game types and maps will we see? What are the custom games options like? What's the state of theater? 343, if you're seeing this, I implore you to write up a blog about what we can expect and cannot expect at launch as far as core features go, and to do so soon. We're on the doorstep of September and mere months from the start of the holiday season. The sooner you rip this band-aid off, the better, for everyone. The last thing Infinite needs right now are more surprises like this. Halo Infinite was always going to be something of a last stand for many Halo fans. After this recent news, 343, if you aren't going to delay, please be as upfront about the rest of the game as you can. You've generally been doing a great job at communicating with the community, so what you do next will be very important. More than a few fans are on the edge about this game and franchise, so please 343, do not let us down. Before we move on though, I'd like to spend a little time addressing co-op in Forge and how this delay should be used. In the case of co-op, if 3 months pass, the feature launches, and we're just playing as clones of the Master Chief again, I am going to be upset. 343, if you have to delay this feature, please make the delay worthwhile. Show us you're working on an improved co-op experience in some manner. Let us choose to play as established characters, or maybe as our multiplayer Spartans or something. Just please, make the wait worth it. On the subject of Forge, I simply hope that 343 can, as mentioned, give us an offering on par with Halo 5. More than that though, 343 should endeavor to make its addition to the game a big deal. Advertise the crap out of Forge and its inclusion for Infinite. Again, make the wait worthwhile. I've now said my piece about Infinite and its current state, so let's end on a more positive note. As mentioned before, some of the members of the dev team were recently able to go into the studio and host some in-person meetings. The team is playing through the game on different hardware, testing things out and whatnot, and as they do, we get to see some interesting pieces of footage that I'd like to overanalyze. Now, much of the footage is familiar, showing the Chief meeting with the pilot from E3 2019 and some multiplayer footage. Later though, we see some new stuff, such as what appears to be the Chief in a banished structure of some kind, and the first-person view model of the shock rifle, which is a lot more red than the toys have indicated. Another screen shows the Chief being fired on from a banished outpost, possibly not far from where last year's demo was set. There's a subtitle along the bottom, some comms officer speaking over the radio saying, "Thinking about other humans back on Earth? Well, I wouldn't worry." This seems to imply that either Earth is fine or not in any serious danger. At the end of this line of screens, we can see a new weapon of some kind. It looks very Forerunner, but I can't say. Some later footage also has some really interesting material. First, on the right here, we have what appears to be a sentinel, though there's some reddish-orangish thing in front of it. I won't lie, I thought this looked kind of Promethean at first, but when I slowed down the footage, I could see electricity being fired at the sentinel. Looking back at the shock rifle footage, the red-orange thing on screen is a dead match for the scope of the shock rifle, so I think that's what we're seeing here, a sentinel being attacked with a shock rifle. And from a quick lore/story perspective, I wonder if weaponry like the shock rifle was developed specifically for raiding Forerunner installations and facilities. The next screen over shows the Chief approaching something, what appears to be a piece of equipment or maybe an upgrade or something. When the player gets close, a UI prompt appears, so it's something interactive. The last two screens don't show anything specific, but across all of these previews, we can see that Infinite's campaign is looking fantastic, which only hurts all the more when you remember co-op has been cut out. But that does it for this update. Some good news, some devastating news, and some new campaign footage. A pretty decent video overall, though again, 343, please address what will and won't be present at launch as soon as possible. No matter how much it may hurt to hear that news, it's vital that you be as upfront as possible here. But what about you all, the viewers? How do you feel about co-op and Forge being post-launch content? Would you prefer to see the game released as planned or be delayed? Let me know in the comments below, and if I remember, I'll set up a poll at the top right of this video, so please vote in that and give me your thoughts. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this, stick around for the Patreon shoutouts, and until next time, this has been Halo Canon. First, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Harspis patrons. First there's Hope, then we have Freight, SS Diko-chan, Discombobulated Sycophant, Justin Montgomery, Ada Frame, and Man in the Dark. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shout out, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits such as behind the scenes materials, including raw audio for upcoming videos, or even shoutouts like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and more benefits are to come. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you really enjoy my stuff, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.